Hey everybody, it's Eric Beach, and welcome to the Journey Well. I'm here with Josh Boguslofski, who is a proud member of Project Echelon. He sits on our board as well as the Director of Military Relations. He is currently serving, which is unique, I think, amongst anybody that we work with consistently, because, and I'll let him speak to this because I know looking to the forward, Josh, this is a big deal for you too. You've been cycling for a little while in the military, and pairing this sport, this endurance sport, the training, and looking at exiting the military in 5-10 years, whenever you're leaving the military, we know a lot of veterans struggle when they get out. I'm very much Project Echelon started because I didn't do so good when I left the structure of the military and the purpose of the military. So getting it to you who's in the military, how much does it mean to you for a start to know when you leave it, whenever that is for you, you have something to carry with you that you started in the military and now have it, so it's not like this complete shock to the system?
Right. So I think one of the biggest things is that I've kind of gone through my own struggles while still in the service. But for me, it's not like I have to leave the military and kind of go through that struggle and then come around full circle, and then learn how to like reach out for people, humble myself and everything like that. I've kind of already done that in its own way. And for me now, it's this thing where it's like, well, when I get out of the military, now I'll have more time to do what I love, which is riding bikes or doing, endurance athletics or whatever it is that Project Echelon is tailoring for me at the time. I now have that to like on the horizon to look forward to once I get out of the service for more intentional time to do whatever it is that I fall in love with at that point.
Okay, yeah, and do you have any? I mean, we'll get into your personal history with the military and kind of touch on what you've been through and what struggles you've already had. But I'm curious, do you have veteran friends? Do you have people that have gotten out of the military that you've seen kind of have similar struggles that you might have had while you were serving still?
Yeah, not to like really name any names, but I mean, I've had a multitude of people that have struggled on some sort of level with either it being abuse or kind of reaching out into the wrong areas to trying to get like their fix or whatever it is that they need to feel comfortable after the military. I believe one of the biggest things that people struggle with is the structure and the having some sort of thing to do for the day. I feel like a lot of them come out as feeling like almost like a lost cause at that point in time. They've been, even if it's like a 3-year assignment to, up to 20 plus years, I feel like, and I've witnessed a lot of people just feel like they are just out to the four winds at that point because there's no structure, there's no goal for the day or the week or the month or whatever. It's just they're there going through the monotony of the day with no plan whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's very relatable. I mean, that's exactly kind of what I experienced. And you're a staff sergeant?
Yes.
Okay, so this is also interesting because I was a specialist when I got out, and part of my struggle, and I want to get your take on it because it might be different for you. My struggle was, when I would do something wrong in the military, my leadership, my NCOs, my staff sergeants would, be like, what happened? And then I would say, I thought, and they would stop me there and say, you thought? Well, that's your first problem. Like, I tell you what to do, then you do it, And so I had this adapted mindset of don't think and wait for someone to tell you what to do, and whatever that last order given, you're to execute that until someone that's a higher rank comes in and tells you something different. Like, that was my mode. But when you're a lower enlisted and then you become an NCO, does that mindset change for you?
Yeah, and I'll also say this too. You got out in 2005. So right now I'm an instructor at the Non-Commissioned Officer Academy. So in order for, basically, long story short, in order for you to become a sergeant, or if you're a brand new sergeant in the Army, you have to go through this course. and it does everything from like physical training, like how to conduct physical training, to effective written communication and active listening and verbal communication, like all and everything in between. You learn about the sexual harassment programs, or the, all of that stuff, the equal opportunity and everything like that. So the new-ish Army is trying to instill critical thinkers into the direct and lowest level of leadership there is. So there's definitely a change that's going on. But I would say that there is a level of trying to feed the why to soldiers, especially now, so that they understand. And I believe it's more effective. And you could tell me too, if you knew the why behind what your task is for the day or something like that, even if it's as simple as so we can go home or something like that, work gets done a little bit better. And I wouldn't say quicker for the sake of it being done quickly, but I believe the product is better as well now with that, or so I've seen and heard through my experiences and through other people talking about it.
That sounds better. I mean, I remember in my experience, and probably some of this is still the same, like so we can go home. I remember Friday, I think, was the day we cleaned our rifles. I forget when it was, but we'd always have a certain day that we'd clean, and we'd go to the arms, room, and you're sitting in the hallway on the floor cleaning weapons. And then people would go at like 11 or noon and turn in their weapon. They'd be like, no, it's not clean enough. And I would always wait till about 3 o'clock and just do it once, because there was like, it doesn't matter how clean it is, we're here until 3 o'clock. Like, and there's someone above that said, don't let them go home until this. And so you're just sitting there figuring it out. And in a less tongue-in-cheek way, one of my PTSD things was because I didn't know why certain things happened when I was overseas. And I think there's an element of you can't know why, because you're on this mission that's life and death. So you can't sit here and have this conversation for an hour afterwards about, let me question command decisions after this. And one event was a 3-day search for 2 of our guys that got captured. And we ended up, after 3 days, finding them executed. So we failed this mission, but the intel that we got, we knew where they were that morning, but it was still, dawn hadn't broke yet. And we were ordered to stand down and not go get them. Then we found them executed. So we had this window of time where I believed we could have gotten them, and we didn't go in. Like, I figured we can go in. And that sat with me unknowingly for, I don't know how many years, 15 years, whatever, until this year, 2005 to this year. I was talking to a guy who was former Delta Force, and he explained to me, there's a ton of stuff, there's a ton of red tape that you have to go through before you can order a mission. You have to go back to the Pentagon, and the Pentagon has to get back to you and approve it. And then the intel, whether the room is booby trapped, like the whole thing could have blown up when you sent a detachment into this building, that all has to be thought through. And so I always thought it was my fault. We weren't equipped to do it or something, and that we should have, and we failed in this way. But there's just a bureaucracy, there's a safety issue, there's all these things that no one told me about as a specialist. And hearing that information relieves so much self-blame, survivor's guilt, and things from me 15 years later.
Yeah, I think that one of the things the military is very good at is showing us what we can control. And I think we get especially at the lowest level, we learn what we are in control of. And we very much focus on that, so that then when there's bigger things or things that we can't control, we try to break down, okay, like even at the lowest level, we try to break down what could we have done differently to make this a different outcome, or what could I have controlled to do this. And at the end of the day, and I think that had a lot to do with my, I won't call them issues, but my stress and my post-traumatic stress and everything like that, because it's not an issue. It's something that, you've earned through time on your own, and you have to learn how to cope with it on your own. But I believe that we try to figure out how we can control it rather than just letting it be. Which I think once I started to allow things to be what they were and not focus on them as how I could have controlled them differently or what I can control, even though I can't control those things. A lot of negativity was alleviated from me in various ways.
That makes a lot of sense. And to get into your story a little bit, I know one of the biggest events, I think I can say that, was your incident. Can you maybe talk through a little bit of that, and from the perspective of maybe how you gave up control after, or what feelings, came after the experience, and then how you had to deal with that?
Yeah. So it was actually August 9th, 10 years ago. So I celebrated the 10-year anniversary of like my life day. What is it? Almost 2 weeks ago, I guess, at this point. Yeah, it'll be 2 weeks on, I think, Monday. But I was in a vehicle rollover of an RG33 as a gunner, and we rolled off a cliff as well. And I was in a gunner's restraint system that was not properly working, so I was not cut in half outside of the door hatch, or out of the gunner's hatch, while we rolled, because I was able to slip in through the into the vehicle itself. And as we rolled, I was grabbed by our truck commander, who sits shotgun, and the driver obviously sits on the left side. Grabbed my legs, and in the first roll they were knocked out, so they let go of my legs as we free falled to the ground and rolled. I kind of came to, and everyone else was knocked out in the vehicle, and realized that I had what's called basically my lungs weren't inflating and deflating at the same time. The chest was not equal on my right side, so I realized I had a collapsed lung. No one was awake in the vehicle, so I had to do this myself. Probably one of the most intimate moments I've ever had with myself, and gave myself a needle decompression. My hand was, my pinky and my ring finger were degloved. So what that means is, think of your skin as a glove, and you're kind of peeling a glove off of your hand, but it's your skin. So that was my pinky, my ring finger at that point. And I remember reinflating my lung and pulling myself out of the vehicle, while ensuring that everyone else was okay. But they were safer inside the vehicle at that time, because there was no fire, no leaking fluids or anything like that. And it was a heavily armored vehicle. So I sat there and pulled security until people started showing up, and then I basically passed out from everything, and came to at a field hospital, where a German surgeon gave me reconstructive surgery on my hand while I was still sitting there with a chest tube in, and then flown to Mazar-e-Sharif, Afghanistan. The hospital there for surgery to try to repair my lung as best as they could and throw a chest tube in.
Wow, that's a fun day, fun summer vacation, it sounds like.
It was a heck of a day. It was a good summer camp, I guess.
Like a whole different level of self-discovery, the intimate, personal moment.
You do some wild stuff to stay alive. But came back after I was able to fly, because with a lung, you can't, with a deflated lung or like some sort of respiratory issue, they don't want to fly you at 50,000 feet above ground level because of the pressure and everything like that, especially in an Air Force aircraft. So got back to DC, where I stayed first I was in Germany for about a week with a few more surgeries, and then DC for about 3 or 4 days, and then back to Fort Bragg for about an overnight, just to make sure I was good before I could go home. And from there, they gave me some painkillers, and I may or may not have been mixing those with a little bit of alcohol and stuff like that, because at the same time, the Army was pushing for me to medically retire, with me only being in the Army for less than a year and a half at that point. And I wanted this to be my career, and I felt absolutely heartbroken about it. and my guys were still over there in Afghanistan, and I felt like I should have been there, and I felt like I was being betrayed, and it was really, really tough for me mentally. And I'm also very in shape. I was a very, very in shape physical person. I couldn't do any of that to alleviate anything. And I just had to sit there on a couch and basically stew in my own thoughts and feelings and everything like that while taking, prescription painkillers and being able to get alcohol too at the same time. And there came a point in time where I was stationed at Fort Bragg at this point. Not many people know this story, but I've told a few and I'm comfortable telling it now. I had a plan to end my own life where I drove out to the Outer Banks one weekend and left a note in my car, and I planned to just go out in the riptide and just not come back. And I kind of sat there for a minute and watched the sunset and realized how beautiful the sunset was. And at that point in time, I realized that there are much bigger things out there than what I was going through at that one point in time, regardless of who was there for me or who wasn't there for me. I have a great family. I'm very blessed to still have a great family and everything like that. That was an amazing support for me, but I just kept a lot of it inside for me. And I just planned on going out in the riptide and not coming back. But that sunset, just something about that sunset told me I needed to watch another one. And so got back in my car, threw away the note at a gas station and drove back home. And that was really it. And once I felt better, I started getting myself more physically active, moved to Alaska, where I did a lot of rock climbing and marathon running. But being airborne consecutively for over 6 years does weird things to your body, makes you age faster than a dog. So my knees were gone. I broke my back on a training jump. So once I went to Italy, I kind of fell in love with cycling, just because of the culture. And it was the same thing as, I had a very good cardiovascular engine, but it was zero impact for me, except for, when an Italian decides to hit you with their car. But they're Italian cars, so it's not really that bad. But did that and kind of realized how expensive things were. So I reached out to a few companies about kind of like ambassadorship or something like that. And one of them was the Wisconsin-based Crit Fit Army clothing brand for cycling, where he gave me like great deals, and all I had to do was snap pictures on Instagram and tag them and do some giveaways and stuff like that, living that great influencer life, I guess. But reached out to him one day and was like, hey, what else can I do for you guys? And he said, you're doing great, but I think you should reach out to this guy, Eric Hill, who runs this group called Project Echelon. And that was in 2017, I think, like July or something like that. And talked to Eric Hill, talked to you a little bit, and just kind of fell in love with the idea and stuff like that. I was like, heck yeah, let's do this. Met with Ricky, who's been my coach since 2017, and just really haven't looked back. Fell so in love with the program that I asked you guys what you needed, and you said, come be a director for the nonprofit. And I was like, sure, okay. And have been, elbow deep in all of that. So yeah.
I love it, and we're really we're better for having you, for sure.
I appreciate it. Well, I'm better for having you guys. So
that's how it should be, right?
Absolutely, iron sharpening iron.
Yep. I'm curious because with your story of leaving the note, I've left a note. Mine just said, "I'm sorry," simple and sweet. And I don't know whatever happened to that note, but you had written a note. I'm not going to ask you what it said on that note, but I'm curious how that sunrise impacts you with the sunset. I'm sorry, with the sunrise kit. Does that ever cross your mind? Like, do you connect more with it?
It didn't really until you just brought it up. And it's kind of like, yeah, wow. But like, That's actually really cool, Eric, that you just brought that up. Now I have a whole other reason. Yeah, I mean, now that you say that, like, it just puts a whole different spin on that stuff, because I think that, and I have allocated that sunset to that chapter of my life, that dark chapter of my life, even though it was bringing more darkness, because that's what a sunset does. It was like a chapter ending for me of negativity and, like just self damage that I was going through and stuff like that on that level, where I was happy that it was over. But yeah, with that sunrise kit, first of all, it looks fire. And
Yeah.
like, now that you said that, yeah, I mean, you guys were kind of not necessarily the sunrise for me to kind of like begin the journey, but I believe you guys have allowed me a lot more than I could have done on my own, especially like what you guys offer me and how kind of my story, or like how I'm utilized within the program too. I read something probably about 2 or 3 months ago that said, let your story of struggle be a survival guide for others that you can impact. And I believe that's very, like, be someone's sunrise, not necessarily in every facet of their life or anything like that, but on a level that just keeps them safe, keeps them just chugging through the day or whatever it is and stuff like that, and let them know that you're there for them. I think that's honestly some of the biggest things you can do for people, especially with the business that we're in for Project Echelon.
Yeah, and sometimes that's the only thing you can do. Like for me, I don't know about. I'm sure you deal with survivor's guilt. I deal with survivor's guilt, and one of the ways that I've dealt with it is, well, the reason I had it was because I felt like I never did anything big enough to earn my life here, and sometimes I over romanticize, like that person would have changed the world or something, and here I am just in my own addiction or whatever. And there was a moment where getting into endurance sport, I was like, for those who can't, I will. That's like the mantra. These people aren't here anymore, but I am, and I need to do something with that. And I have to scale back what that is that I have to do. I don't have to cure cancer. I don't have that skill set. I don't have that intellect. I don't have it. But what I can do is I can live, and I can share my story, and because it's mine, and how I use my mind and my body writes that life story. And if I can share that, doesn't matter how many people can relate to it or just relate to a part of it, or even for you, when you're sharing this with me and I'm talking about sunrises and you're talking about sunsets, you had that moment with me where I'm like, oh yeah, that's a really good point. I've never thought about how sunsets become darkness, where sunrises bring light. And that is the life journey. Like, we all have our sunsets, but we also have to see the sunrise. And when that sun rises, it's this new chapter in our life. And I think you articulate that beautifully. And that, I love those metaphors. I love those, analogies, because they help me see world and my life differently. And that's, what one of our other board members, Matt, was talking about, was saying how, in this business, I hate to call nonprofits business, but, we are in a business of helping people, and we're in a business of storytelling. And that's why we're doing this. And Josh is going to be part of these conversations with more veterans, because we have to tell our story, which our story is Josh's story. It's my story. It's Chris's story. It's whoever, it's Corey's story. It's going to be all of our stories. It's Ricky's story. And maybe that's a good transition to hear how much maybe Ricky's own personal struggles, his own vulnerability as a civilian, has helped maybe your perspective as a current service member who will eventually be a veteran, because sometimes that bridge doesn't connect, the military to civilian supporting one another.
Right. Yeah. And I think, like, and it's not even, I know we're in the business of veterans, but, everyone has some sort of patch in their life, and it doesn't have to be PTSD or, some physical trauma or emotional trauma or anything like that, but everyone has something going on that they don't want going on in their life. And I truly believe that if we can be stewards of each other, regardless if you're a veteran, regardless if you're a civilian or anything like that, and just be open or be out there for people. Like one of my biggest rules, or some of my biggest rules are like, make sure I do at least one thing a day for someone that doesn't ask for anything, that helps out their day in any way, in any capacity, but it doesn't have any sort of positive influence on what I'm doing or anything like that. And another thing too is like, if I want to put my head on the pillow every night and say, how did I effectively change my community or what my workplace or whatever it is for something better today? And as long as I can do those things, like I'm peachy when I go to bed at night.
And that's a big deal because sleep issues are plentiful when you're not doing that stuff. And I'm wondering, you arrived to these conclusions. What was there a process to getting there where you went from just self-defeating to being able to say, this is what I need to do to lay my head down and fall asleep?
Yeah, I would say that, and I'm grateful for both of them, but the two failed marriages that I've been through, going through the second one right now, finishing that up, have allowed me to take an opportunity to step back and re-fall in love with who I am and what makes me tick, what makes me the person I am, and everything like that. Not saying that they were horrendous relationships. I'm grateful for both of them. They were amazing chapters in my life and everything like that I'm very grateful for. But at the end of the day, I do believe that those two things allowed me to reinvest in myself in a way that allowed me to be who I truly am. And I am a fixer. I know I'm a fixer. I can't go to sleep without trying to fix things. But what I was trying to fix within myself and the way I went about it was unhealthy until I was able to step back and say, how about we recalibrate how we do this? How about we recalibrate what needs to be fixed and how we fix it? And then how do we change that energy into a more positive spin for other people too?
That's a lot of wisdom, because you're not changing who you are. It's not saying this is bad of me. It's just the refocusing of who you are into an empowering way. And that reminds me of this M. Scott Peck. He was this doctor, a psychologist, and author. And he had this definition of love that I'm going to butcher right now, but I love it, because what it says is love is the willingness of oneself to extend oneself to the spiritual development of another or yourself. And spiritual doesn't mean religion. It just means I want to see you grow. So I love you, Josh, if I'm investing in you willfully to see you grow. I'm investing in myself if I love myself because I want to continue to grow and contribute. And we need those two things for continuous motion forward. And so when I hear you're talking about the after incident report of marriage, and saying, I realized and learned for myself, but now I'm reapplying that self-love, because if I don't love myself, who can I really love outside of that? Because I'm doing it in maybe some kind of non-effective way. Not wrong, just ineffective. And I'm wondering for you, do you use endurance sport? Do you use the bike, maybe unintentionally, but to process through those emotional realizations?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, and Rick, you'll probably roll his eyes, there are times does my workouts, like specific workouts for me on a daily basis. And I will say that I'm very guilty of certain times when I'm having a hard day of completely burying myself physically on the bike, which I would much rather do than go back to some of the negative things that I've done in my past to try to cope with those that I know don't work. And it's just a good process to do that. However, my dad when I was in Italy, so about 3 years ago, when I just was relatively new and stuff like that, I very much invested into the workout and stuff like that too. But my dad said at one point, he said, you need to pick your head up. You need to see where you're at too and enjoy where you're at. So I think that that's also helped me with a lot of my coping too, is be able to look up, regardless if it's, the ride, and you look up and you're like, wow, that's, an amazing field with flowers, or like yelling moo at the cows as you go by and stuff like that. But I think we can see that in our life too. We want to be, the next step. We want to be promoted to sergeant first class. We want to, for me, move down to DC as soon as possible and get on with my career and get out of here and stuff like that. But at the same time, we need to stop and we need to, or pick our head up while we're going through this and realize where we're at and appreciate where we're at, because there might be people right here, right now, that need us to pick our head up and help them out, or say something kind to them, or extend a hand to them, and or show them empathy, not sympathy, but empathy. And maybe that's where we need to be at that one moment in time. So yes, cycling does very much so have a very positive effect on how I process through all of my feelings. And there's some days where it is getting to the end, pushing myself through the workout, but then there's also times where I pick my head up and, if you will, smell the roses and see where I'm at, which is also just as therapeutic for me.
Yeah, and so you bury yourself. I'm guilty of that too. I'm sure everyone is. One of my coaches, Adam, he says it this way, that it's okay. You don't want to do it every time, because that's a diminishing return activity. That if you're going out there every workout, that's a rest and recovery ride, and just redlining it, you're defeating the purpose. But life is life, and I know that there's been a couple times recently where, I don't know, for me it was just I'm doing things very slowly, but I get the old me that's a little bit faster to pop up every once in a while, and I'm like, you know what, I think I'm gonna dig in a little bit here, because this feels really great, and then I pay for it a little bit later. But it can't be. You can't go that way every day.
Right. And I think us being able to be cognizant of when we can, when we should, versus when we shouldn't, even though we want to, is very healthy. And it shows a sign of emotional maturity once we've hit that point, and being able to do that. Because there are times I call Ricky and I go, I'm going to kill myself. Let me rephrase that. I'm going to push myself beyond what I should like today.
There you go.
I apologize for anyone that I might have freaked out, but
he's okay. He's okay.
I'm good. I'm safe. I'm good. Life is great. But I believe that we should know those days, because there are days our body is calling for it and just being like, hey, I need you to just put me through the ringer today. And then there's even times where, like, I'm supposed to put myself through the ringer, but I'm like, not today. And able to know that for myself. And also, one of the great things about Project Echelon too is I can reach out to Ricky, my coach, who's one of the pros, and say, hey, I'm kind of feeling this today. And he's like, no problem, man. We'll figure it out, and just do what you need to do today, whether it's a recovery ride or don't ride, and go have a beer or something like that and relax, or like whatever. But I think that once we get a good handle on ourselves and we eventually become servants for other people, that's the next step for us. Is not just, because there's times too, as servants, especially in this program, you want to serve, but you're not filling your own tank too. And you burn yourself out, and then you get yourself into this deep, dark place that you need to then pull yourself out of. So you just stop everything else you're doing to do that.
Yeah, and that self-awareness piece is so huge. And I want to backtrack and tie that in a way to your story and my story. And I almost guarantee you every person who's been influenced by suicidal thought, their story and their family story, is the craziest thing about suicide is there is no predictor. There is no, I totally knew that was going to happen. And I've, sat with families who have had their husband and sons, commit suicide. And I've talked to them and extended this uncomfortable truth, but also in some ways freeing, because they blame themselves. People blame themselves for the loss of a loved one. Why, grieving, why wouldn't you? But the craziest thing is that when I attempted, the triggering incident was the most benign thing. It was an insult at a bar when I was drunk on Jack Daniels. And it was enough for me to feel so small that I went crazy, just numb, went and I attempted, took a bottle of pills and went to sleep and expected not to wake up. But nothing could have predicted that. There was nothing in that. If I could see the insult right now, I'd probably laugh hysterically and being like, whoa, like really, how did that? And it just happened to be the thing because of the years and years of spiraling and self-hate and everything that wasn't processed and a lack of self-awareness. And to have optimism and be self-aware, you need daily practice. And so what we have with endurance sport, what you have with the bike, what I have with triathlon, is a daily practice that we can do sustainably and feel that self-mastery, to gain the positivity, to gain the self-awareness, to take the things that say, am I overreacting here? Let me own this, and then actually be a better human being as I go back out into the world.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
So I guess with that concept, have you ever found, because I think this is equally important, because I know I'm guilty of it, not guilty, it's happened to me. Have you ever resented the bike?
I wouldn't say it as a resentment, but I would say that there has been maybe one period of time in my life where it's almost become a damn near unhealthy obsession, without me having either another outlet or avenue of approach to go to kind of get myself not out of any problem, but like, for instance, like the weather being bad in upstate New York. Who would think that's probably a possibility in like 6 months? And I'm grateful for, Saris with Cyclops and stuff like that to be able to take care of us with indoor capabilities and stuff like that for, people that are in some of these places that it's not, Tucson, Arizona all the time. Yeah, so there were times where I wasn't able to do that. And I felt myself slipping back into that area because it was like I couldn't do it. But also there was probably one time last year where I had to call Ricky and be like, my body is not healthy right now because of how much work that I'm putting onto the bike. It is becoming an unhealthy level of me striving to do that. And I had to sit back and kind of refigure out certain things, like one or two extra things to kind of help me cope with what I'm going through so that it's not just specifically the bike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that resonates with me, and I'll explain something after I explain this. And the reason I posed the question is because sometimes things that are good for us can become not good for us if we don't catch it quick enough. And right. Or if our performance isn't meeting our own need, we can look at it and just really use this beautiful thing to dog ourselves further. And it's paramount to be able to catch those spirals before you start blaming a thing that's really healthy for you, which I've done and I've caught it. And I think I'm hoping I'm finally past it, because I'm like, it's irrational. It's completely irrational, because then I stopped doing the thing that I need to do. It's just I was engaging with it in an unhealthy way. Exactly. And the thing that I want to share too with you is that now Josh is a great athlete. He's a competitive. He's racing. I'm talking, not you. So you're okay. A great athlete, and not everyone that Project Echelon serves is this super athlete, even a competitive one. It's a lot of people that are just wanting to move their bodies, to heal their minds, to find an outlet. And that is a wonderful thing too. So not everyone works with a pro coach, so it's a very subject, person to person kind of what do you need type situation. And so with that subjective nature, each story has unique elements that tie into this thing we do, which is endurance sport. And with the resentment, with fear, with all these things, you crashed recently. Yeah, and it was pretty gnarly. And I'm curious, when something like that happens, what is the mental process for you? And I'm sure you have triggers and things. I don't know if any of that stuff came up from your rollover, but what was the process of training and then just getting wrecked like that?
So first, it was severe anger, like beyond possibly any anger I've had outside of Afghanistan. Because of all this work, all this effort, wearing this kit, representing this organization that I'm a director of, or I'm on the board of directors for, Ricky's time and effort that he put into me, the money put in, the deals, the sponsorships, the everything like that like was into this, because it was a New York State race too. And so in the back of my mind, I'm thinking I have a legitimate chance to wear the New York State jersey for a year. With Project Echelon on it, like with me moving down to DC, I'd still get to wear it for some of those crits and some of those road races. It was going to be fire. I already had that like in my mind going into this, and the race was great. I was there not working because Ricky told me not to work. And so I'm very guilty of working all the time. So I was doing everything I was supposed to do. And just a touch of wheels in front of me, involved about 6 or 7 people in front of me. Couldn't go left, couldn't go right. So I had to go through it, and got ran over in the process 2 or 3 times. I don't remember. There's a great GoPro video of it that I took down because I'm tired of watching it and having it. But I was really, really upset at first. And I couldn't finish the race just because of the bike having a few issues, but I was able to kind of limp it back to the car and stuff like that. And then I remember it went from anger to pure sadness. I called my parents to let them know I was okay. And my mom heard it in my voice, and she said, "You just need to let it out." And I probably sobbed for about 5 minutes, like just felt bad for myself, felt bad for me not being able to represent the team well, or, even, me or Ricky or y'all, or like any of that could not be done. The mission couldn't have been on the podium or anything like that. And with everything going on with like my relationship coming to an end and stuff like that, I just felt like absolute crap. But after that, for a minute, I reached out to a few other people and stuff like that, because through this whole thing, I've been able to, create a network of people who have my back, regardless of the situation I'm in, and also call me out on my BS, which is very important for people, is to make sure you don't just have people that are like, you're doing the right thing, but are able to also sit in your corner and call you out when you're doing the wrong thing. And they all just loved on me in every way that they possibly could. And I was very, very grateful for that. It allowed me to pick my head up and do a 6.5-hour drive down to DC the same day the accident, crushing, as one of my friends that I've met through this whole thing, Marge, who lives out in Arizona, she told me to drink Bang Energy and eat Tylenol. So I did that all the way. I wouldn't suggest that to many people, but it was a long drive, and I kind of figured it out along the way. And then went down to DC and was able to do a pretty hard coffee ride the next day with a bike shop down there. So, I mean, it was a really, really tough mental moment for me, and I felt myself slip there. But because of this organization and allowing me to be able to reach out and meet new people who didn't have necessarily the same struggles I did, but are going through, again, what we talked about earlier, some sort of empathetic viewpoint, because they're also going through something or gone through something too, I was able to be taken care of in a relatively short period of time compared to other people.
Wow. So, and that's life. Like, pain is unavoidable. It's inevitable, but suffering is avoidable. And the suffering is, this negative spiral of saying the outcome should have been different, but it wasn't, and I'm going to just stay stuck on my worldview of how it should have been and just punish myself over and over. And that's really hard to do when you have good relationships.
Exactly.
And that, like what you said, was beautiful. to call you out on your BS, and sometimes that's just tough love. But finding those people who have that voice that aren't abusive and manipulative, it's like,
Right.
you know it when you hear it, you know it. And if your BS meter is saying, no, this is abusive, this is manipulative, you're just being mean, you can recognize that voice saying, no, I'm just trying to stay stuck in my misery because I know it so well, because I've done it so much. I've self-sabotaged everything, and if you want change, you have to challenge it. And I think that the thing that I'm going to say is, when you get involved with something, Project Echelon or not, it's relationship. Everything that moves you forward is relationship. There's no real way that I've found in my own journey to avoid the fact that I need other people. It can be a handful of people or just an engagement to start in a community online. It can start that way, but it always has to progress to face-to-face communication with, and finding your person and your people to do that. I don't have to be everything to you, Josh. Ricky holds great weight in your life, and that is what I'm really excited about, is just finding one person that you can go to. I have a buddy, Adam Hill, who he's become my go-to for almost everything that I struggle with, or for training and things like that. And that is the bedrock of, I fail and I can get back to it, because I have those voices and you have those voices, and so many veterans have those voices that happen to be through Project Echelon. And I want to, end it with this, opening it up to you to summarize this in however you want to. What is it that, the person who's sitting at their computer on their phone right now that, is kind of entertaining this idea of, maybe endurance sport is the thing that's going to help me finally figure out this thing? Like, what do you say to the people who haven't started but maybe are deciding it's time to get better?
You need to join the community. You absolutely 100% need to give this a shot. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out for you, we help you find what you need, period, end of subject. But I will tell you this. I have never, in my 13 years in the military and 31 years on this rock that circles the sun, have ever had a community of men and women that are fully invested in you. Not at an unhealthy level again, but at that level that you succeed both through your own struggles and with whatever physical fitness goals you have. It doesn't need to be winning a race. It can be finishing a race. It can be increasing your bench press. It could be, trying out for, worlds at some point or something like that, or being supported for the Paralympics, which we have too. But it literally is just this organization of men and women who want nothing but you to succeed and have the best done every day. And I don't mean succeed as in win every race you go to, or hit your FTP or anything like that, or hit a certain wattage, or, a certain time with some sort of race or something like that. It's just you being better than you were yesterday. And if you continue that march forward, you can become a better man or woman every day at a time. And it's not just veterans, it's volunteers, the pros. Like, it's just amazing. I would have never met Ricky or have called him like one of my brothers or something like that. But I can safely say that now, that I can call him anytime I need to, with not even a mental problem, or, a mental struggle, or, PTSD, TBI related stuff, or even fitness stuff. I can just call him and just shoot the crap with him for, 30 minutes at a time, to the point where I'm meeting him for the Green Mountain Stage Race in 2 weekends. And he's going to probably, see my family. I'm going to get to meet some more of the team and stuff like that. And it's something I'm stoked about. Moving to DC, I'm going to be able to meet Frank. I'm going to be able to meet more of the guys when they go do the Armed Forces Classics and hang out around DC and stuff like that. And it's just like, I'm not just excited because they're members of the team. I'm excited because we all have this common goal, and we all work our butts off to make sure it happens. Not at an unhealthy level, but we want people to succeed. So the worst thing that can happen is we help you find a new program where you do succeed. But I promise these people that are sitting here on the fence, you will succeed in this program.
I think that is beautifully said. And I have met the team, obviously, And I promise you, they are more important than anyone realizes. They're not just a pro cycling team. They are pros who care about you, the veteran, and that is a huge deal. And it is almost, I'm convinced, impossible to not find unlimited motivation just being around them and watching what they do. I am pushing myself in ways to things that I didn't think were possible because of the exposure I've had to them, because they call you to a higher place. And that's what real relationships, if the relationships you have aren't calling you to a higher place, you got to question where they're calling you. And that's what this organization is calling you to your highest potential and using endurance sport as a way to get there. And Josh, you're doing it. You're not perfect at it. I'm not perfect at it. We're going to fail. We're going to struggle, but we're connected. That's not going to change. That's the thing that's not going to change is relationship. And you've got that. I've got it. We're going forward. And I'm thankful to have you on this call. And people, you're going to see a lot more of Josh in the future calls with other veterans because it's about a community voice. And you're a valued member of this community, Josh. And I'm grateful for your time today. And that's going to wrap it. So until next time, journey well, my friends.